Brown versus Board of Education. In the United States of America, the Civil Rights Act of 1866 was established to protect the civil rights of African Americans. In 1868, the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified. It extended liberties and rights granted by the Bill of Rights to formerly enslaved people, including them under the umbrella phrase, all persons born or naturalized in the United States. It thus guarantees that all persons born or naturalized in the United States, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Not everyone in the USA agreed on these civil rights, and in 1877, Jim Crow laws began. The Jim Crow laws were state and local laws introduced in the southern United States. They enforced racial segregation. Jim Crow was a pejorative term for an African American. In 1896, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the separate but equal argument presented in the Plessy v. Ferguson case did not violate the 14th Amendment. This case became the basis for legal segregation in the United States. In 1909, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, was established. Civil rights activists established the NAACP to fight racial injustice through legal means. In the 1930s, the NAACP established a legal defense and education fund to fight legal battles in court. Headed by Charles Hamilton Houston, the fund created a strategy of dismantling segregation in education. Several school segregation cases were combined under Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka in 1952. The case originated in 1951 when the public school system in Topeka, Kansas, refused to enroll local black resident Oliver Brown's daughter at the school closest to their home, instead requiring her to ride a bus to a segregated black school farther away. The Browns and 12 other local black families in similar situations filed a class action lawsuit in U.S. federal court against the Topeka Board of Education, alleging that its segregation policy was unconstitutional. In Brown v. Board of Education, the attorney for the plaintiffs was Thurgood Marshall. Starting in 1948, the NAACP Board of Directors endorsed his strategy of fighting segregation by tackling school segregation. In May of 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously ruled to overturn Plessy v. Ferguson. In 1958, Arkansas's governor, as well as lawmakers, refused to desegregate schools. In the case of Cooper v. Aaron, the court reaffirmed its ruling in Brown and explicitly stated that state officials and legislators had no power to nullify its ruling. Thurgood Marshall later became, in 1967, the first African American to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court. Writing for the court, Chief Justice Earl Warren argued that separate but equal facilities are inherently unequal and violate the protections of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. The court reasoned that the segregation of public education based on race instilled a sense of inferiority that had a hugely detrimental effect on the education and personal growth of African American children. However, the decision's 14 pages did not spell out any sort of method for ending racial segregation in schools, and the court's second decision in Brown 2 only ordered states to desegregate with all deliberate speed. After the decision, there was wide opposition to desegregation, largely in the southern states. Violent protests erupted in some places, and others responded by implementing school choice programs that subsidized white students' attendance at private, segregated academies, which were not covered by the Brown ruling. Many Southern governmental and political leaders embraced a plan known as massive resistance, created by Senator Harry F. Byrd in order to frustrate attempts to force them to desegregate their school systems. In 1957, a group of 9 African Americans, now known as the Little Rock Nine, enrolled in Little Rock Central High School. Their enrollment was followed by the Little Rock Crisis, in which the students were initially prevented from entering the racially segregated school by 270 soldiers of the Arkansas National Guard, sent by Arkansas Governor Orville Eugene Phobos. After several days of violence, they then attended after the intervention of President Dwight D. Eisenhower. The confrontation in Little Rock drew international attention to racism and civil rights in the United States, as well as to the battle between federal and state power. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was the most powerful affirmation of equal rights ever made by Congress. Despite this, Jim Crow laws remained in force until 1965.